Continue on our series on King. And, well, have you guys ever just told like a horrible joke? Other than Natalie, I mean, this guy gets paid to do it. Okay. No, Natalie, we love your jokes, okay? And, dude, why not get paid to tell bad jokes, right? So, you guys, I told like probably the worst joke to some friends. So I am out overseas. I am in Europe, okay? And so, jokes don't always translate, but we found some jokes that like worked well, okay? But this is gonna work way better if I actually have some. Would someone like to for me to abuse them just a little bit? Are you okay? I'm like warning you. I am warning you, okay? Okay, I'm warning you. Okay. So okay, come on up here, Ricky. What? This is not a roast section. This is not roast. This is not roasting. Okay, so we're telling knock-knock jokes, right? So you guys love a good knock-knock joke probably, okay? And so my friends, I used to be way worse at people would egg me on, and I would just do whatever you could get me to do. Say whatever. I would say the craziest things because people would egg me on, right? So this was like the starting of the jokes. And mind you, Ricky here was a friend that we had met. Okay, actually, this girl we had met. I'm sorry, Ricky, But so she doesn't speak English. She's from, I think we're in Slovakia at this time, so in Eastern Europe, okay? And so here's how this first joke goes, okay? So knock, knock. Interrupting starfish. Boom, okay, yes. And they thought that joke was hilarious, okay? No, that's not it, okay? So now my friends start egging me onto bigger and better jokes, okay? So we go on, and this is where I take it too far. Are you sure? Okay, so here's the thing. Knock, knock joke number 2, okay? Knock, knock. Interrupting waterfall. Yes! Okay. So, but it was worse. Thank you. I'm so sorry, Ricky. I feel bad now, right? And he knew it was coming, right? But she didn't. And here's the worst part. Not only did I just get her wet or him wet, right? But that joke, they taught me to do it by taking a drink. And in the middle of it, knock, knock, spit it out on their face. I absolutely did it to her. I know, yes. I'm sorry, Ricky. Forgive me. Oh, man. You guys, so the worst jokes ever. So, we get talked into doing a lot of just dumb stuff, right? Especially me. Especially, guys that, don't have a filter, and you rely on friends for your filter. Does anyone rely on a friend for a filter? You used to? I still do, okay? Yeah. I'm getting so much better, you guys. But here's, we are controlled by, we don't realize how much power we give to our inputs. We don't realize how much power we give to our influences. I just see Ricky there. He's like, my goodness. Drying out his mask. Hey, why don't you just go get a new Chi Alpha one? I mean, come on. He deserves it. Get this guy a new Chi Alpha mask. Come on. Dude, hey, thanks, Ricky. Thanks for volunteering as tribute tonight. And so the Bible speaks of godly influences, okay? And what happens when we put when our inputs or influences start replacing God on his throne, right? We can have good influence, we can have bad influences. Tonight, we're going to share about this king, this young king named Joash, okay? And Joash, man, has this crazy, crazy story, okay? So we're going to be in 2 Chronicles tonight, 2 Chronicles 24, and that's where we're going to pick up the story. But just so you guys know, if you have not read this story, I'm going to, paraphrase it, but you need to read this story, okay? Because this story should be made into a movie, okay? 2 Chronicles 24. Second Chronicles 24. We're going to skip around. I'm actually going to start earlier, okay? I believe his story starts in 22 or 20. If you want to get kind of the backstory, check out 22, okay? Because how this story starts. And you guys, does anyone need their timeline of prophets and kings? I got a couple left. Here, come and get it. And so Joash has a couple. The evil grandfather, right? His grandfather was not a good dude, okay? And so in the middle of just living, like his grandfather dies, right? And what happens is his great-grandmother takes the throne, okay? And she takes the throne, and as soon as she takes the throne, okay, she goes and she destroys the royal family, okay? So she goes off and she starts murdering the royal family one by one, right? And so what they do is they go and they take Joash as an infant and they go and hide him, right? They go and hide Joash for 7 years, okay? So Joash now is a toddler, right? And as he's grown up, this man named, this priest named Jehoiada, don't quote me on that one, okay? He has this plan, okay? He concocts this plan. So what he does is they take him and they place him on this throne, okay? And they are going to yell at a certain time, and then this grandmother, this queen mother is going to come out, right? So he sits on the throne, they yell, right? She comes out, boom. They take her, they actually murder her because she just murdered like This is crazy. This is what I'm saying, that this should be a Hollywood movie, okay? Who wants to make this for me? And so this is where we're picking up. So now Joash is 7 years old when he takes over the throne, okay? 7 years old, right? So this isn't a kindergarten story. This is not a Sunday school story, because if it was, they would start right here. They would start with like the picture of just this little kid with this crown that's too big, right? And he's playing. But this is where the story of Joash as king begins. 2 Chronicles 24, starting in verse 1. We're going to read 1 through 4 really quick. It says this: Joash, when he was 7 years old, when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Josiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for him. Can you imagine that being 7, right? And like getting hooked up with not 1 wife, right? But 2, right? And you can barely walk, right? And you just like, hey, like I got some lady. Like just imagine this, okay? This kid, this crown's too big, okay? And now he just got 2 ladies, right? I don't know how old he is when he gets these. I just imagine a 7-year-old with like 2 girls. And it's just kind of awkward, right? And they're just like playing in the sandbox, and then pretty soon, they're married, right? And and he had sons and daughters, right? We don't know when that happens. We're just going to leave that there, okay? So sometime later, Joash decided to restore the temple of the Lord. So Joash was this great king, starting at 7. And what he had was what made him so great was there was this man that he loved, that he trusted, right? And this man set him on the throne, and this man mentored him. This man like gave him godly, wise advice, okay? And then as he grew up, man, he started loving the Lord, his God, okay? And he began to build the temple. See, the temple had been destroyed. He's like, no, we have to build the temple. He saw some sleazy stuff going on. He's like, we got to stop the sleaze, right? So he stops the sleaze. They get money. They build the temple up, okay? And now we're going to skip to verse 15, 24:15, okay? And this is where we're going to pick up the story. By the way, have you guys ever had someone like that priest in your life? Have you guys ever had a Jehoiada in your life? Dude, I remember when I first came to college, okay? I was looking for friends. I was looking for community. I was looking for someone to show me how to live. And this guy named Jim came up, and he, like, placed me under his wing. He, like, taught me about Jesus, and, like, we just did life together. Man, I want to encourage you that if you're not doing life with someone, if you're like, don't got someone that can encourage you, that can build you up in your faith, find someone like that. Okay? So, verse 15. Now, Jehoiada was old and full of years, and he died at the age of, you guys ready for this? 130. He was buried with the kings in the city of David because of the good he had done in Israel for God and his temple. This man left a legacy. He was not a king, but he was a counselor to kings. Could we be a counselor to kings, right? So he dies at 130. Verse 17, after the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and paid homage to the king, and he listened to them. Joash began to listen to different voices, began to listen to different inputs in his life. He had new influences now, right? He listened to them. They abandoned the temple of the Lord, the temple that Joash had spent years building. They abandoned it, it says. And the Lord and the God of their ancestors and worshipped Asherah poles and idols. Because of their guilt, God's anger came on Judah and Jerusalem. Although the Lord sent prophets to the people to bring them back to him, and though they testified against them, they would not listen. Okay? See, Joash, his downfall, the thing that he put on the throne of his life was these inputs, was these influences, right? Man, do we put the wrong influences on the thrones of our hearts? 1 Corinthians 15, starting in verse 33 to 34, says this: do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Maybe you guys have heard that, right? Joash had great company at first, and then he turned to bad company and it corrupted his good character. Come back to your senses as you ought and stop sinning, for there are some who are ignorant of God. I say this to your shame. So Joash was ignorant to the fact that some people were going to lead him away, that the inputs and the influences in his life weren't godly and weren't what they were supposed to be. He surrounded himself and began to listen to those other inputs and those other voices. And Joash, though, man, he left a legacy, though he built the temple, he did not finish his race in his life well. We can do that here at college. We can do that in a semester or a year. We can do that towards the end of our life. And it's sometimes those inputs and those influences that determine the destiny of our lives. We don't want to just live a great life. We want to finish a great life. Man, I want to leave a legacy that is not just for a portion of my life, but is through my whole life and endures years and years beyond my living, okay? And Joash stopped his because he placed the wrong inputs and the wrong influences on the thrones of our hearts, right? Our inputs can control our destiny. Your inputs can control your destiny. I heard this said once, and the saying goes that your thoughts lead to actions. Your thoughts lead to actions. What you think leads to the actions of your life, right? Your actions are going to lead to habits, right? When we begin to do things over and over again, it becomes habitual, right? Our habits lead to a lifestyle. The habits that we build become like who we are, and they develop this lifestyle. And your lifestyle leads to a destiny. You guys catch that? Thoughts lead to actions. Actions lead to habits. Habits lead to lifestyle. Lifestyle leads to destiny, to a destiny. Your thoughts, which are controlled, which have a power from your inputs, can control your destiny. What you put on the throne of your heart, those inputs and influences matter. They matter. We can brush it off, we can push it away, but those thoughts, those inputs have power over us. And we have a lot today. Am I right? So what can our inputs do in us? 3 things before, man, me and Sarah are actually like tag teaming this tonight, and she's going to come up and finish tonight. But 3 things, and these are the only things that our inputs can do, but 3 things that our inputs do or can do in us. They can control our outlook on life. Our inputs can control our outlook on life, right? Philippians 4:8 says this, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." When we put in the right inputs in our lives, right, our outlook on life is going to be different than we put on let bad inputs come into our lives and our minds, right? The second thing is what they can do is they can change our perspective on God and others, right? When we let someone speak about a friend that is wrong and misleading, right, we start to think of someone in the wrong light and in the wrong sense. The same thing happens with God, and I believe that's one of the things that started to happen with Joash. Is Joash had these other guys that were like, hey, yeah, that temple you make's great, but what about these other gods? What about these other things? We could be great. People could not just worship this God, but they could worship something else. And maybe you could become great. And he's starting to think in a different light, and he starts to see God as someone who he is not, right? And the third thing is that we kind of spoke on is that our inputs can control our destiny. Our inputs can control our destiny. So who or what you are letting speak into your life is important. Now I'm going to invite Sarah up here. She's going to finish sharing tonight. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah is sharing.
Sarah is sharing. Thanks, Mike. So important when we look at the life of Joash and how he lived out his life. This whole concept of inputs, and one of our main inputs in our lives, at least for me personally, these days is this, right? We have social media and Insta and TikTok and YouTube and Disney Plus and Netflix and so much available on one device. I love it, right? There's so much possibility in the palm of my hand. The advances of technology amaze me, and there's nothing inherently evil about this, right? There's so much good that comes from this technology as well. But unfortunately, oftentimes, this can begin to control us. And Natalie's handing out a few things, so don't let it distract you. Just grab it, and we'll talk about it in a second. But if you take one, that's great. But anyways, sometimes, unfortunately, this can distract us or control us. And so I become a slave to these things sometimes, these inputs in my life that are on my device. And you're thinking, wow, that's pretty strong language, Sarah, right? To become a slave, that this controls me. That's silly. Of course it doesn't control me, right? But what if I asked you to give up all things media? Video, TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, movies, TV shows, sports, football, all things social media. What if I asked you to give it up for 2 whole weeks completely? Absolutely completely. What is your first internal response? If your response is, what? You're talking crazy, Sarah. I'll lose all my snap streaks. That sounds too hard. I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that. Maybe if that's our response, that might be a sign that to some aspect there's a little control, that we're giving this over our thoughts and our mind and our lives. And so a few thoughts for you guys to chew on. Yale University did this study that 80% of people whipped out their cell phone in less than 20 seconds when having to wait in line or in a waiting room. We've all done it, right? right? A split second of not knowing what to do with our time, or a little space in our attention and our schedule, and the first thing we go to is to pull out our phones. Like, I'm so guilty of this. I probably would have been the first one to have it out, right? It's kind of habitual. This is a major source of input in my life, of influence in my life, a source that I give my attention to, of my attention. And so the same Yale study talks about inattentional blindness. And so what inattentional blindness is being blind to anything we currently are not actively paying attention to. So inattentional blindness is when we could fail to see something right in front of our face because we're distracted by something else. And so some of the research used a large dancing gorilla. And most of the participants missed, 90% of participants missed a dancing gorilla because they were actively paying attention to something else. And that something else for most of us is this. It's our device. It's social media. It's addicting TikTok videos, right? Like, let me just show you one more. Wait, let me just show you one more. Wait, just one more. We got to go. I promise, just one more video. And so the study asked, if we can miss a dancing gorilla right in front of us, what else is going unnoticed in our lives? And this hit me. If I'm on my device so much, what are the things going unnoticed that maybe God wants me to notice? What are the ways God's speaking to me and I'm completely missing it because of inattentional blindness, because my attention is here in all of the in-between spaces of my day and my life, when I wake up and before I go to bed, and as we go about our days. If we can miss a large dancing gorilla, how much more can we miss someone that passes by that's just discouraged and needs a little encouragement, right? A heart that God wants to heal, someone who God wants to bring joy and life to through us, or someone maybe who's just simply desperate for a friend and they're just hoping that maybe today someone would simply notice them. I want to be more aware and attentive in my life, but media consumption for me hinders that. And for me, my media consumption increases my inattentional blindness and decreases my awareness in life and my attentiveness towards God. And so the average smartphone user, which is probably all of us, I don't know anyone who has a flip phone in the room, touches his or her phone 2,617 times a day. So if you sleep for 8 hours, that means that each waking hour, on average, we're touching our phones 163 times an hour. Because it's notification look, right? Notification look. And it's more for people with smartwatches. We've had this conversation with someone before, right? And 2,617 touches a day. And author-speaker John Mark Comer says, what would my life be like? Okay, 2,617 touches a day. What would my life be like if I allowed God to touch my mind as frequently as I touched my phone? Right? TikTok users spend an average of 50 minutes a day on TikTok. One poll said the average American Christian, 81% said on an average day they spend 0 minutes reading their Bible. What does that say about what's on the throne of our hearts? And so when we're talking about the throne of our hearts, what we give our attention to gives us insight to what's on the throne of our hearts. It's been said that attention is the beginning of devotion. So worship starts when we turn our mind's attention towards God. And John Mark Comer says, Jesus wisely said, our hearts will follow behind our treasures, right? In the Bible, Jesus says, where our treasures are, there our hearts are also. He said, usually we interpret treasure to mean our two basic resources, time and money. But an even more precious resource is our attention. Our hearts will follow the things we give our attention to. And what you give your attention to is the person you become, exactly what Mike was talking about, right? Are we giving our attention to something significant or something empty? He says, what you fill your minds with will shape the trajectory of your character. So in the end, your life is the sum of what you gave your attention to. So what are the things you give your attention to? In the in-between spaces of time throughout your day, What does your mind habitually go to? Because for many days, for me, it's a device. It's things that ultimately like are empty. I was thinking today about Screw Tape Letters is, I think, a brilliant fictional book by C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors. And it's a series of letters, like correspondence from the senior demon to his nephew. The senior demon is Screw Tape. And he's training up his nephew in the ways of darkness, I guess you could say. And so Screw Tape writes about how to keep the believers of God distracted and therefore ineffective in life. And Screw Tape shares how, as demons, they don't need to make the people of God bad or evil or even turn them against God. They simply have to distract us into ineffective, lukewarm, apathetic, dull, indifferent, lethargic, inactive followers of Jesus. Simply distract us, and that is what we become. And so Screw Tape says to his nephew in this book, you no longer need great works or things of significance to attract a person's wandering attention. It doesn't have to be anything big. It's the smallest of things that can make them do nothing at all for long periods of time. And that's what social media has become for me at times, right? I'm distracted, and at the end, what have I done for a very long period of time? Nothing at all. Checking one notification turns into 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, 60, right? One video turns into 2, 5, or 10. And the tech industry has literally figured out how, through physiology and psychology, how our minds work and how to keep us addicted. And how to keep us engaged for as long as they can on our devices. There's this competing for your attention in the tech world where we have become the product and they make money off of how much of our life we're willing to spend on the screen. And it's said that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So basically, we're all being manipulated, right? We're all being used. But anyways, if you guys have seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, if you haven't, I encourage you to watch it in the next couple days because it's pretty enlightening. And again, I'm not saying that all media platforms are inherently evil. There's so much good that has and will come of them. But what I am saying is I'm worried for myself. I'm worried for us because they have the potential to rob our appetites for eternal things. The things of God, the things that last. And you see, our lives are driven by appetites, right? We have physical appetites. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we eat, we drink. And we are intended to also have an appetite for the things of God. And so Psalm 62, Psalm 42, other places in the Bible, it says, my soul hungers and thirsts for the living God. That we would hunger and thirst and have a desire for the things of God. That we'd eat and drink and consume and partake in the things of God in relationship with God. What do we hunger and thirst for? And just like when we snack and nibble on food all day, which I like to do, anyone else? Then we may not be hungry for the main meal, right? The thing of substance. My mom would always say, don't eat that, you'll ruin your appetite. And author speaker John Tyson, he describes how we're always nibbling at the cultural table of media, so we never get our true appetite for the things of God, for the things of substance. A little bit of that, a little bit of this, one more TikTok video, 10 more minutes of scrolling. He said we're always nibbling at the things of media that in essence robs us of our appetite and our desire for God. And this is what we're talking about with inputs. It's so important to be cautious of the inputs in our life. And he said, John Tyson said, for me, to be hungry isn't enough. I want to be starving to know what's in God's heart for me. He said there's a story, the prodigal son, right? In Luke 15, you can read about it. The prodigal son, when he was hungry, he went and ate slop with the pigs. But it was when he was desperate for God, when he realized how starving he was for food, that's when he ran to the Father. That's when he returned to the Father. And sometimes when we're hungry, we try to find satisfaction in everything else, but it's the starving, it's those who are desperate for something more, who come home to the Father, who chase after the things of God and for the very things that they were designed for. And so Tyson just asks this question out of an ache in his heart. He says, where are the people who are starving for the things of God? Where are the people who want something more in life than just one 30-second video after another, after another, after another? Where are those who want more? And I'm challenged by this. And I hope you're challenged by this. And maybe our appetite for the things of God has been suppressed for way too long because we've simply been distracted, right? Screwtape said, it's the smallest of things that can make them do nothing at all for long periods of time. And we weren't created to take in all these forms of media, all these inputs from the world. It makes us anxious. We're created for more inputs from God. And there's so much more I want to say about this. But what I'm getting at is this. If you look at in times of famine, people are willing to change their entire lives to get what they need. And I think what I've realized is that we have to realize that we need God. We are desperate for God. There is no true life apart from God. We're intended for life with God. And my question is, will we be willing to rearrange our lives for more of God? And so we're just asking you if you will join us for 2 weeks to rearrange our lives, saying we want more of God, so much so that we're going to set aside a few distractions. And on that handout, there's a little slip of paper, and we're just asking you, will you join us in a 2-week media cleanse? We're going to start next Wednesday, so we're not starting until November 4th. That will be day 1. We're going to go 2 weeks, and the goal of this cleanse is that we would reset our system, that we would reset our spiritual hunger, our spiritual palate, that we would allow for more of a hunger for the things of God to be stirred deeply within us. So you join us in saying, I want to break the control, if there is control. And if there isn't control, would you say, I just want more of God? I just want more of God than scrolling on my Instagram or consuming TikTok videos or keeping up my Snapchat streak. More than any of that, I want more of God, and I want to be more present in life and more aware, more present with my friends and those around me. So I'm going to give up these distractions for a little while. I'm going to choose God as my input. And so this is what we're going to do. There's that slip of paper, and basically you're going to write your name if you want to join us and say, I'm committing to 2 weeks, starting next Wednesday, just 2 weeks of saying no to all of these distractions because I want more of God. And the amazing thing is when we make ourselves more available to God, amazing things begin to happen. Like the world inside of us begins to change, and the world around us begins to change. And so Mike and Quincy are just going to lead us in one more song of worship. And what we're going to do is, I was thinking about how historically a lot of great things have happened on university campuses in our nation. And in history, there's been these great revivals and huge spiritual awakenings on university campuses. And how they started was a small group of college students would get together and they would say, we resolve to this thing of God, or we resolve to this thing. And they would get together and they'd actually write out formal resolutions, This is our resolution, and they sign their name on it. And it's not just good intention, it's like a commitment. It's like, we're going to do this no matter the cost. So that's kind of what we're going to do as they're playing. If you feel God stirring you, like, yes, I want to put away these distractions for more of God, I want to ask you to put your name on that little slip of paper. And then sometime during this next song, come set it on like these steps up front. Because there's something powerful about stepping out in front of everyone and saying, yeah, I want more of God. And if you don't feel compelled or stirred or you're not there yet, like no judgment on anyone that does not come put something up front. It's totally fine. But we're just saying, We want inputs that will change our lives and the world around us. So we're going to together for 2 weeks just chase hard after God and see the result and see what God speaks to us and see what he does in our lives. And so just take some time and fill that out and come put it on the steps, and then we'll close and I'll share something else with you. But let me pray. Jesus, we just thank you that you have so much more for us than we can even imagine, God. And I don't want to sell myself short because I'm distracted by things that ultimately are empty, God. When you are the God of satisfaction, you're the God that has greater satisfaction for my life and greater purpose for my life. And I think about Paul in Philippians where he says, I consider everything a loss compared to the greatness of knowing God. For his sake, I've lost all things, and I consider them rubbish so that I may gain Christ. And just in the season, we want to say that these things are nothing compared to you, God. We want them to have zero hold on us, and we want you to be the influence in our life, God. We want to submit to your leading and your life and your direction. And so, God, would you stir in us a hunger for more of you? Would you stir in us more than just a hunger, but a desperation, a starvation of recognizing that we need you more than anything. And so we're going to choose to chase after you more than anything in our lives. So just in this moment, Lord, if we put our names on that slip of paper as we take a step of boldness and just say, yeah, I'm committing to this together with anyone else who's willing to, would you put some sort of deep resolve in our spirits that would help us walk it out, that it's a commitment that no matter the cost, we're doing this. We're going to chase God for 2 weeks together and see what he does and see how he works in and through our lives. And so, yeah, just speak to us in these moments, Jesus, and stir our hearts for more, a desire of more of you. Just pray that in your name, Jesus.